Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Richards. Guys, we got an awesome freaking show for you today. I tell you what, the guest that's going to come on today, he and I have been chatting quite a bit, and we have definitely both been, I don't know, maybe like giddy schoolgirls, just waiting for something incredible to happen. And today's that day. So we're going to be talking about the importance of belief, and it's all type of beliefs, right?
Absolutely.
Society is crazy with belief. I may believe something that you don't agree with, and vice versa.
hmm
And one of my favorite things to like to say is it's not my job to get you to believe what I believe. It's not my position. You believe what you feel like you believe. We've all been raised differently. We all see things differently. Who says you're right, I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong? How the hell do we know? So,
Right.
but what is incredible though, one thing we can change when it comes to belief: what do we believe in about ourselves? And we're going to talk about that today because this gentleman, Noah Nudo, who I have on the show today, we're going to get into some really, really deep stuff. So, Noah, thank you, my friend, my brother, for taking time out of your day to be with us. Greatly appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Al, and I appreciate the opportunity. And like you said, I've been extremely excited about this. You and I have spoke zero dark 30
Yeah.
every day since you and I connected, and I just look forward to it. Every morning I have my ritual, just like a lot of other people, and you became a part of it, and I feel like it made me stronger. The more, I don't want to use the word goodness, but the more I get from people, the better off I am. And I've been like that my whole life.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that, Noah, because that is so true, right? Um,
Mhm.
our listeners have heard me say this, I don't know how many times, but I cannot wait for show days. And the reason why is because I get to be in front of some of the most inspirational and amazing individuals I've met my whole life. Now I've been on this earth for 60 years now, and I've met some really awesome people, and I've had some really good friends in the past. However, since starting this podcast, the plethora of people that I have in my corner that will be there for you no matter what, and the inspiration and the love and the kindness that they have behind it, man, I'll surround myself with people like that every day of the week.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. I met a guy a long time ago when I was getting clean about 8 years ago. And he always said that people that are in recovery are no matter what people.
No matter what, people. Interesting.
Yeah.
And
So
what did he mean by that?
I think, for example, so when you're in active addiction, you're going to get what you need no matter what. You're gonna search, you're gonna lie, you're gonna deceive, you're gonna do all the things that you shouldn't do to get something. But I think that's kind of where he was going with it, as of turning that negative energy into positive energy, and becoming something special, becoming the individual you were supposed to become. Because that's where a lot of people get lost. They it's and I don't want to talk too much about it because we will get into it. But in early recovery, it's overwhelming. It really is. It's overwhelming with your thoughts, emotions. Just basic things are hard, and I've always considered that a test. I've always tried to relate being challenged to getting better. Okay, well, I have to go through this because, my higher power is testing me. And I constantly would use that until I was strong enough to make the decision on my own to overcome things. I always felt in the beginning, and even now, Al, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, it's that it's a group effort. And I don't mean, it helps to have people in your life and good support, and we'll also get into that. Me being a therapist, I see a lot of that now and see how important a solid support system is and how it makes that big of a difference. It's kind of life or death when it comes to support, and a lot of people don't want to talk on that. They usually want to put it on the individual. But as well as I do, Al, when you're sick and you're going through it, you're probably the least person affected.
Yeah.
you know
Amen to that. And we like to say every once in a while, and I've got a few friends that say this, is the opposite of addiction is connection, right? We need that connection. Okay. And it's just human nature, right? It doesn't matter even if we're not in addiction, we still need that human connection to make us feel somewhat whole.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah. So Noah, my hell, man, the first time you and I spoke on the phone, I was at an event. Matter of fact, the event that I was just at this morning. So it was a month ago when we first spoke over the
Oh,
phone.
wow. Really?
Yeah, yeah, it was that long ago. And man, you shared as quickly as you could about your life. You have seen a lot of shit. You have been through a lot of shit. So, and before I go forward, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for your services. Right, I am a firm supporter of anybody like a first responders, our military, because they're the ones who have really helped make this freaking country amazing. And anyway, we don't want to get into the political bull crap because yeah, this is a different show. But again, just thank you so much for
It's my
everything
pleasure.
that you have done to protect me, my family, and so many others. So thank you.
You're going to get me crying already, Al.
Oh man. Well, it's coming from the heart, and believe me, I got tears in my eyes saying it because
I
that's
can
how
feel it.
much I appreciate you guys.
I can feel it.
You know, man, just share with our listeners just a little bit, just at the beginning, kind of what got you into the addiction.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So, as a live for a living, I'm a therapist. So I tell my story a lot because a lot of people that are in recovery or struggling or maybe still in addiction, I've always heard, I mean, ever since I started this, I've always heard people say, man, I really love those story meetings. I really love when someone comes into a meeting and they tell about their life and how they overcame things and all that stuff. So I would always concentrate, and this isn't a lie, Al. I would always look in the mirror and practice. That's what I would do. I would practice my story. I would practice how I delivered it. I would practice everything from A to Z. I would just practice it and practice it and practice it. And I'll get to that part of my story. But where I'd like to start out is I grew up in the city of Pittsburgh. I knew about life at a young age. When you grow up in the city, you're surrounded by a lot of different people, and some of those people are evil. Some of them are good. And being a young kid in the city, I had to be aware of my surroundings. I had to be aware of who I'm talking to. I had to be aware of everything. So for a young kid, say 5, 6 years old, to know about life and bills and being poor and all those things, that's a lot to digest as a kid. It really is. That affected me. It really did. But as time went on, what I did was the easy thing. My mother I was raised by a single mother. I have an older brother, Dominic, and I have a little sister, Lucia. And I joke with me and my brother joke, and my mother's going to see this podcast and she's going to probably say something to me about this, but I'm going to be as honest as I possibly can
And
because
happy birthday to your mother too, by the way.
oh, thank you. Your name's Joyce. So happy birthday, Ma. But yeah, Al, there'd be a lawyer, a doctor, and an alcoholic. She picked alcoholic every time, no matter what. I don't know what it is. And that happened all the way throughout my life as a young kid and as a teenager. Thank God she found somebody now that's a good man and takes care of her and treats her how she's supposed to be treated. So that's a good thing. But back to where I started from, Al. So in my teenage years, all I seen was drug dealing. All I seen was people making fast money. I seen nice cars, I seen nice clothes, and I didn't have any of those things. So I thought to myself, what's the fastest way to get those things? What's the fastest way to get respect? And I was such a young-minded kid that I thought that was respect. So what I did was I started selling drugs at a young age. I'm talking 12 years old,
Wow.
selling pot, selling cocaine. I mean, anything you could think of substance-wise, I sold it. And I'll never forget my brother. He always said to me, he said, I'm your dad. Because and I'm going to get to that right now. I apologize. I didn't mention that yet. When I was about 4 years old, my father died. He was an alcoholic. I think it's called asphyxiation. He actually was sick, threw up, and ended up choking. And I was 4 years old, and I have maybe 2 or 3 memories of my dad, and they're of hitting my mother. So it's weird how, me as a parent now, I think about it and it bothers the heck out of me. But, being 2 years old, I can still remember clearly, him on top of my mother holding her down because she wouldn't give him the keys because he wanted to get more booze. And it's kind of a funny story, and I'll share it with you, Al, and everybody else. But I can remember, my father was 6'6", big man, veteran himself, and my mother's a little Italian lady, about 5'2". You know, I will say she uses the F word for commas. She's definitely an old Italian woman, could cook from scratch, pizza, ravioli, whatever. And if she likes you, she'll do anything in the world for you. But if she don't, you'll know. She's one of them people.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I just remember my brother holding me back because I wanted to help her. And I remember myself crying and my brother trembling. I could feel it. And I'm going to get emotional about this. And he grabbed a, excuse me, he grabbed a squash and hit him in the head with it. I'll never forget that. And he got off him and we all ran. And about a year later, we left him and we moved in with my grandparents. And he ended up passing away. So back to what my brother told me, he said, I'm 9 years older than you. I'm your dad. And I always held that to my heart because my brother was a good man. He never got into trouble. He never did drugs, never drank, never did anything. And for someone to grow up like we did without a father, we all have different dads. His dad played a little part in his life, but he didn't really play a part in his life until my brother started becoming successful. So, we grew up with just my mother, and my sister was a lot younger than us. So I looked to my brother for everything. He was my hero. He really was. And he used to always quote Jimmy Valvano. I don't know if you're a sports fan now, but he was a coach for NC State, and he had cancer. There's a Jimmy V Foundation. It's all over ESPN. He raised millions and millions of dollars for cancer. And my brother would always say this to me. He said, the greatest gift I could give you is belief. I want you to know that I believe in you. No matter good, bad, ugly, I believe in you. And that stuck with me. To this day, it stuck with me. And as time went on and I was in the street and I was doing the wrong thing, my brother was always in my ear. Hey, you're doing the wrong thing. You're taking the easy way. That's the weak man road. I know you got money now, but I promise it spends different. Fast money spends fast. I remember him saying that to me. And he said, there's nothing in the world worse than wasted talent. I was an athlete growing up, me and my brother. My brother went to Penn State for basketball back in 91. And he always pushed sports on me. He didn't teach me how to change oil. He didn't teach me how to fish. He didn't teach me how to hunt. All he knew was sports. So that's what he taught me. And he instilled that in me. And he instilled the discipline that you need to be good in sports. And he would practice with me, throw a ball with me. Anything he could do to make me better, he did. Without him, I don't know where I would be. He's just a tremendous man. And, I don't want to take anything from my mother because she was a wonderful woman. And no one's like your mother. And I mean that. And I'll
Yeah.
say that again.
True.
There's no one like your mother. No one will love you like your mother. No one will be there for you. No one will believe in you like your mother will. So I know how important it is to have a strong woman, a strong mother like I did. So I don't want her to think that, she didn't help me tremendously because she did. But as time went on, I kind of laid the drugs down and I started getting real into sports, playing basketball, baseball, soccer, whatever it was I would play. And as time went on, I ended up getting an offer to a decent school for baseball. And I want to tell you this little story out so it shows you what kind of mentality I had and how lost I was as a young kid. So I'm 18 years old. This coach comes to our baseball game, and I hit 3 for 4. I don't know how familiar you are with baseball, but
Mm-hmm.
I did pretty decent hitting wise. And I played center field. There were no balls hit to me that game. And I'll never forget, after the game, I walked over and there was a football field right next to the baseball field. And he said, "Hey, I see you could stick the ball." He said, "What kind of arm you got?" I said, "Give me the ball." So I stood in the end zone and I crow hopped. You know what that is?
Not really.
Okay, all it is hopping before you throw, sort of.
Okay. Okay.
It gives you more spit on the ball. And I threw it through the uprights on the other side. That's 300 feet. So from any baseball field in the world, I'll throw a line drive to home plate. And that was a D-bag move. That was a move that I shouldn't have did, but he wanted me after that. And he talked to my athletic director, and I ended up going to this school. And I lasted about 3 semesters, right? And I kept getting chances and opportunities. And they said, listen, you have this great opportunity, you're blowing it. You're a baseball player, right? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, you got 2 strikes. One more, you're done. So I go to this party and I end up smoking pot with these guys. And I noticed that they all left this room. So I'm just sitting in there hanging out, and I see the door open, and it's my coach. And he said, "There's your 3rd strike, Noah." And I don't want to blame other people, but I wasn't a likable person at that time. I wasn't from the South. I was from the North. You know how that goes, North South stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget, Al. I go home and I knock on the door right to my mother's house. And she's a little Italian lady, like I said. She looked up. She said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Ma, I got to tell you something." She goes, "No, I already know." I said, put my head down. She said, "You want to make decisions like a man? I'm going to treat you like one." And I ain't been back since. And she never let me back in. And as time went on, I went right back to the streets. In my early 20s, I went right back to the streets. And I can remember my brother, he was always good for these quotes. He said, "If you do what's easy, life will be hard. But if you do what's hard, life will be easy." And I thought about that. And I was like, you know what? And my brother's name's Dominic. And I've always taken the easy way. No matter what, it was just how I was built. I would always take the easy way. And then he would always push me about the military. He said, "You need to go to the military. I know you're making good money." I was working for Westinghouse. I don't know if you heard of it,
Yeah,
Al.
absolutely.
Okay. This nuclear power company, and we would go to nuclear plants when they would have outages, and we would refuel them. And I was making fantastic money as a young kid, but I wasn't happy, and I was traveling, living in a hotel, and that's no life. I don't know if you've traveled before, but it's hard.
Yes,
It
it
is.
is. Yes.
It's extremely hard. So I went back home, and I was about 24, 25 years old. And that's when everybody started doing pain pills. And to be honest with you, I smoked pot and drank a little bit here and there. Never been a drinker because of how my dad was. I don't know if it was subconsciously put in my head as a kid, but I never got down with drinking. I can't even take the smell on somebody's breath. It really upsets me.
Hmm.
So I never really got into that, which is weird because I became an addict and did opiates and then heroin. So
Yeah,
it
right.
wasn't, you know, it wasn't probably the smartest move to do, but anyway. So my brother's pushing me, and he could see that I'm falling off, Al. He could see that I'm really wrapped up in this stuff, and I'm starting to do them every day, and I'm waking up and I'm snorting pills before I brush my teeth. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm better than this. I know I have a problem. I know I do. And this is before the army and before I really got diagnosed with an issue. And I ended up talking to my brother. He took me into his house. And this is how my brother is. I would compare him to like Mickey from Rocky. You've seen Rocky, right?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Yep.
And one of my favorite lines, he said to Rocky in the second one, he said, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what's going on." They're in the locker room, and he goes, "You got a ticker problem." And I always put that in my head that I didn't have enough heart to overcome these things. To back to what you said earlier in the beginning of this podcast, I didn't have the belief in myself. I didn't have that self-belief that I could overcome this. I just thought that I was weak because I would choose that route. Anytime I had an issue, I had a problem, things didn't go my way, I looked to escape. And I kept doing that and kept doing that until I was about 27 years old. And then my brother took me in, he said, "Listen, I don't care what you say. You're going to the service and you're going to become the man you're supposed to be. I'm sick of seeing you kill yourself. I'm sick of you being half-assed." And like I said, my brother's like my father. I said, "Whatever you need me to do, Dom, I'll do it. I'm sick of living like this. I'm sick of looking over my shoulder, doing all this stuff." And mind you, Al, this isn't nowhere near where I was when it was the worst of the worst. And we'll get to that. But I just want you to understand, before I went to the service, I kind of established a little habit. So my brother, like I said, he's like Mickey. He would go, "All right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to wake you up at 4:30 and we're going to run 5 miles every morning." I was smoking cigarettes at the time and pot and everything else. And I couldn't run a mile probably. And he said, "I don't care." He said, "I will push you. You don't even understand what you could do. You've never pushed yourself." He would always say that to me. And I'd be like, "How's he know what I did?" I know I pushed myself, but I really never did. So in the morning, Al, this is a true story. When I would get tired, he was in a car behind me and he would hit the gas and push me with the car. That's
Oh,
a true
yeah.
story. Yeah, he would push me and he goes, "Ain't no quit." Ain't no quitting. And I just remember him saying about the ticker problem. You know, he would always quote Rocky movies. It was his jam, dude. He would always just, and they would get me going. I don't know what it was. So he got me in shape. And, you know, I was clean. I was clear minded. I was doing good. I ended up taking the ASVAB test. I scored extremely high on it. In a certain there's different aspects of the ASVAB test. I scored extremely high when it came to how could I put it? Like the IQ part,
Okay.
how high your IQ is. So they said, well, you could be a linguist, you could be anything military intelligence. And I was looking and looking, and I was like, all right, well, linguist sounds cool. I'd love to learn a different language and translate, and that would be cool. And it was in Monterey, California, which is beautiful. I don't know if you've ever been. It's like paradise. So you know, being a 27-year-old dude, I'm thinking, man, that'd be awesome to go to Northern California, you know, go out there for a year, learn a language, and then go to my first duty station. So I went to take the test, and how it works is it's called a D-Lab test. And what they do is they make up a language, and you have to decipher it yourself. There's no answer key. You just have to decipher it. And I couldn't do it. So the guy said, all right, well, you know, don't get discouraged. You still did well on your test. You qualify for this, that, and the other. And I seen interrogator. And I thought to myself, man, my friends back home right now, if they seen me looking at interrogations, you know, they associated with a cop, you know, I'm thinking in my head, I need to leave that street mind back in Pittsburgh. I said, I want to try this because I've always been good with people. I've always been good at reading people. I've always been good communicating. So I ended up taking a test and I did good and I passed it. And they said, all right, well, you're going to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. I said, where the hell is Fort Huachuca? I've never heard of it. And they said, it is in Sierra Vista. I said, where the heck Sierra Vista? They said, you ever hear of Tucson? I said, absolutely. They said, about 2 hours from there, right by the border. I said, all right. They said, but first you got to go to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. You got to do your basic training. So I ended up doing my basic training. I did well there. I was actually, forget what it's called. I was like the platoon leader, and I was older too. I was 27, you know, so they treated me a lot differently. I would say that if I would have went in at a young age, it would have been a lot harder for me. I think when a young kid, woman or man, goes into the service at a young age like that, that's extremely impressive to me because I've been through it and I know how hard it is. And for you to be a kid and do that, that's special.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is. So I ended up finishing basic training. I did well. They sent me to Fort Huachuca. So this course, Al, it's the interrogation course. You also learn about source ops, and what source ops is this. Say you and I are in Afghanistan, and we have to meet a couple guys and gather intel from them. What we would do is we meet them, say at Burger King. Once we got to Burger King, we go, hey guys, listen, in about 10 minutes, I need you to meet me at Kmart. And then they go to Kmart, and then we'd be like, hey guys, in about 20 minutes, I need you to meet me here. So it's pretty much just planning and learning how to have meets with people and gather intel and be able to run a source is what they call it. So I did that. And then they also taught me about interrogation and how 90% of communication is nonverbal. What people are saying, they're not saying with their mouth. So I learned all that. And I knew about it as well, being a street kid. You know, you have to pick up on those things or you won't survive in the street. So I already had that feather in my hat. And then once they taught me the book part of it, that's when I really start getting good at people. And I always tell people all the time that it was a double-edged sword once I learned that. Because you'll overanalyze, you'll look into things, and you know, you're not always right. You're not a human lie detector. You know, I have to remind myself about that. And then you also get a complex because when you're interrogating somebody, you could be whoever you want to be. You know, I could be Major this of the Army for 40 years. I could be Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. I could be whoever I want to be. You know what I mean? So it gives you kind of a complex. And a lot of people would always try to be mean or tough or use, you know, and I'm not a small man. I'm 6 foot. I think when I was in the service, I was about 220. So I was in good shape and I was probably intimidating. I have my beard out, you know, I'm Italian, so I get a tan. I look just like a Middle Eastern guy. Seriously, I put my hat. I look just like them. I just can't speak it. It's unbelievably hard. It's all throat. So I needed to learn Posh too, and it's sort of like it sounds like this. It's like it's all this, and I couldn't learn it. It was just unbelievably hard. So I went through an interpreter, and that's another thing you have to worry about if your interpreter's telling you the truth or if he's trustworthy. You know, so there's a lot that goes into it, and also if you get bad intel, Al, I could kill a platoon of guys.
Yeah, right.
Just
Yeah.
by bad intel. And that's something you have on your head. So that's something that I always worried about. And thank God I avoided that. And nothing ever happened. But once I finished school in Arizona, which I do want to mention, not to pat myself on the back, but it has the highest washout rate in the military. So it's one of the hardest, if not the hardest course to complete and become an interrogator of the United States Army. So I was very proud of myself. There were 260 soldiers, 54 made it, and I was one of them. So that was an extreme. I felt probably prouder than I ever have in my life. You know,
I can see why.
I was very proud, Al, and I just felt different. I had a different swag about myself. I was just more sure of myself, and the belief was just building and building. So I ended up getting stationed in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is Fort Carson, one
Yeah.
of the most beautiful, excuse me, one of the most beautiful places to be stationed at while you're in the service. So I'm there in about let me think. I think it was okay. So it was after we did a 6 month run, went to Afghanistan, came back. We're doing PT, right, playing flag football, and I mentioned to you this already. I end up tearing my Achilles, breaking my ankle in 2 places, and severely jacking my ankle up. So I end up getting surgery, and they put me in this company called X Company, which is for people that are military and veterans will know what I mean by this, and I'll explain it. We called them, you know, shitbags, people that didn't want to do the right thing. People took the easy way out. We call it shamming in the military. When you sham, when you try and get out of something. So that's what the unit of our X company was. So I didn't want to be around those people. I came from special forces. I was with 10th group. So I held myself to a certain standard. So did everybody else. And you know, when I went with those guys, they treated me differently. They treated me with respect. And I earned it. I really did. You
Right.
know, I did a lot of hard things in the military. And I immediately judged them out. And they were some of the nicest people I ever met. And that's when I started changing the way I think. And as time went on, I kept milking my injury. I kept saying, man, it's not getting better. Man, it's not getting better. I need more pills. Man, it's not getting better. And I shared this with you. It wasn't like, hey, pick your prescription up at the VA. It was like, hey, how many you need? You know,
Right.
I was like, you know, 120, whatever. And they'd give them to me. 3 days later, I come back. And then I remember waking up one day and I said the same thing I said to myself years ago. I'm doing these before I brush my teeth. I'm doing this before I drink coffee. Now it's a problem. It's affecting my life. It's affecting my health. It's affecting everything about me. I need help. So I end up going to I go to the hospital at Fort Carson, and the guy that did surgery on me, he was the one that prescribed me pain pills. And I said to him, I said, sir, I said, I'm doing these before I brush my teeth. I said, I have an issue. He said, well, we could give you this and this type of pain medicine, and we kind of wean you off and kind of give me the runaround, kind of just, you know, you're okay. You know, it's not as bad as you think. I said, okay, well, whatever you say, sir. You know better than me. You're the doctor. That's what I'm thinking. And I ended up getting medically discharged from the military about 6 months later, and I'm still on prescription drugs. So I end up driving from Colorado, and it's a true story. I remember how stupid I was. I bought 2 fentanyl patches. Do you remember hearing about those?
I do. Yes. Yep.
I would chew on them out. I would cut them in four and I would chew on them. And I was driving home like that, which is insane. Driving from Colorado to Pittsburgh. I'll never forget that. And I remember nodding off and smacking myself in the face and pulling over and just being a total mess. And I go home and everybody's happy to see me. Everybody's proud of me. Everybody's so welcoming, gave me a party, everything. And I felt like $1,000,000. But deep down inside, I knew I was a bum and I was a loser and I was becoming a junkie. And I didn't share that with anybody for a long time. And then I think it was 2 months after I got home, Al, I went to the VA in Pittsburgh and I went and seen the doctor. I needed a refill. And he said to me, how old are you? I said, I'm 31 years old now, sir. He said, you shouldn't be on any of this. He said, they overprescribed you. This is a problem. I said, so what am I supposed to do? I feel ill. I didn't even know what dope sick was, Al. He said, I could give you something to help that. And he told me what it was. And I remember saying to him, sir, I could eat that whole bottle and it not do anything to me. He said, that's all I could do. That's all I could help you, Noah. And I thought to
Mm.
myself, what's the next best thing? The street. So I end up leaving. They don't give me anything. They cut me off. I leave. I start buying pills, and I start buying these things that they came out. They were called Opanas. They were painkillers, and they were a mixture of oxycodone and morphine. And I would snort them. And I'd buy, and I left this out, and I want to make sure that I touch on it because it's important. I got 25 grand when I left the service. I spent it in 2 months on drugs, on pills,
Wow,
and I wasn't,
25,000.
25,000 in probably 5 weeks out. And to be honest with you, I never been a guy that did coke, uh, really any other substance other than opiates. That was my thing, and that was my jam. So I probably spent say 20 grand on just that. So as my money started getting low, and all the doctors were getting caught, all the doctors were getting cut off because they were overprescribing. They were, setting people up for failure. What's the next best thing? Heroin.
Heroin, that's what most people go to after the pills, yeah. And it's
So
cheaper, right? Cheaper and
absolutely,
easier to
way
get.
cheaper, way
Yeah.
cheaper. So instead of spending $100 for 4 pills, I could spend $100 and get 30 of them, 30 pills. I get whatever amount of stand bags. It doesn't matter. I get a lot more, like you said.
Yeah.
And I started snorting it, and no one knew. Just thought I did pills. I started snorting and snorting and snorting it. And then it changed. When I started doing heroin, that's when I became an animal. That's when I started stealing from my family. I started stealing from my mother. I started writing checks. And I'll never forget what my mother said to me when I stole from her one time. She said, "Noah, you know how I know it was you?" And I said, "How's that, Ma?" Because I denied it. I was in denial. I
Oh,
would
yeah.
never admit that. I was too far gone. She said, "Because you didn't steal anything religious." She said there was a
You didn't steal anything with what?
religious.
Oh, wow.
Uh, there was a
Holy cow.
crucifix necklace, crucifix ring, and some other thing that was like a medallion or something. And she said, "That's how I knew it wasn't you, or that's how I knew it was you." And that really hurt me. And it made me realize that I do have good in me, but how can I get it back? How can I find that goodness that I have in my heart? Because I was so far gone now. And as time went on, I started stealing from my brother. I start stealing from my sister. I start making stories up. I got to get this money by this time. I got to have $250 by this time. I got to do this, that, and the other. I started shooting it. I remember going to my brother's, he was at work. I knew the code to their door. And I would hit the code and I go in there and I would ransack my nephew's piggy bank. And that's probably the worst thing I ever did in my eyes to my family. And I always tell people when they say, "I can't believe you weren't in jail," and how did you, get out of this unscathed? And I said, not unscathed. I said, what people don't understand is the reason I stole from my family is because I was a coward. And I knew that they wouldn't tell on me. I knew that they wouldn't put me in prison. So I knew if I stole from the people I loved most, I wouldn't get in any trouble. And to me, that was the biggest coward I've ever been in my life. And I tell people that. And when I tell people that story and they're like, "I can't believe that this dude is even talking about this in front of 150 people." But that's the only way that I feel better, if I tell people about my experiences and my trials and tribulations, because I could repent to God, I could pray, I could talk to God, I could just talk to you. But when I'm in a room and there's 200 people and I'm telling my story and they could feel me when I speak, that helps me so much, y'all. I can't explain that to you. So anyway, I start stealing from my nephew's piggy bank. I go into my sister-in-law's room. She has a big thing of jewelry. I end up stealing a bunch of jewelry from her. I do want to share with you, Al, on this journey as I'm 27 to about 30, 35 I was when I got clean, or 36 rather. I went to rehab about 17 times. My brother took me every time. Every freaking time he would take me, he never quit on me. He said, "Listen, I love you and I believe in you and I know the good in you, Noah. I know what you're capable of. You just got to find it. You got to dig deep. You got to dig deep." He just kept saying, "You got to dig deep." And I just
Well,
kept using it. Good. I'm sorry.
can I pause you just for a second, Noah? So with
Absolutely.
you saying that, I just want our listeners to to understand this, and it was a mistake that I made, right? 17 times is a lot. My wife went 8. And I remember after the third or fourth time, when she'd say she was going to go into recovery, me as someone who cared about her, right, who's supposed to be there to support her, was just like, why are you wasting your effing time? I mean, seriously, why? You haven't figured it out in the last 3 or 4 times. Why are
Yeah,
you going?
different.
And I put her down every single time. Every single time. Like I've shared before, I was her therapist instead of her husband, and now you know why I was such a shitty therapist, right? That's why I don't have the certificate on my wall. What I didn't realize till afterwards, and I have to say this towards you as well, doesn't matter if it's 5 times, 7 times, 8 times, 17 times, 25 times. You never stopped. I never gave her credit, not once, for at least going and trying. Right? I didn't see that because I had my blinders on just like she had her blinders on. And I want our listeners who are on the other side of addiction to think about that for a little bit, right? Because it's not easy and our system is not set up for success. So I will not blame everything on the individual that's going to recovery, because 30, 60, or 90 days is not even close to long enough to get your shit together, right, and getting your life back on track. So we leave the life of our loved ones and their future in the hands of insurance companies, because that's who decides, or a family member, until they start running out of money to help pay for recovery. So I just wanted to throw that in while you were talking about that, right? Because I want our listeners to understand it's not that freaking simple.
No, not at all. It's not. And I was being kind, Al. I bet you I went about 22 times, to be honest with
Okay.
you. Yeah. So I'm just I'm gonna be completely honest with you and your listeners. And you know, from day one when you and I spoke and you told me about your, you know, briefly about your story and your wife and the things you've been going through and what you've overcome, you know, I told you that we have a connection. I don't know what it is, but there's something between us that brought us together. And I'm glad you shared that with me because I didn't know that about you. And for you to share that tells me that you're taking accountability for things that happened years ago. People don't do that. That's special, man. That's a special thing to think back and to understand, well, you know what? I was effed up and maybe I didn't support her as much as I should have, or maybe I supported her in the wrong way. But for you to just take time and go back to that, man, that's special, man. So I thank you for sharing that. I
Thank
mean
you.
that. That's
Appreciate it.
special. Absolutely, man. I'm sorry.
No. So to get back, so you said what, 22 times, 23
Oh
times?
yeah, yeah. Okay, I do
So
know now.
that's where you were heading before I paused you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So 22 times we'll say I was about 30, and granted, remember, I got out of the service when I was 31. I didn't go to rehab before that. So
Yeah.
from 31 to 36, I went 20 some times, right? And I went out of state, I went in state, I went military, I went civilian sector, every way I could go. My brother would always make a joke and he go, you know, rehab's for quitters. I'm sure you heard that before.
I have not.
Oh no, yeah, he would always
No.
say, joking around. And I'll never forget the time, you know. Now listen, I want to make sure people understand how good of a man my brother is. To take your younger brother that you seen grow up as a kid to rehab over and over and over again, and then see him get good, and then drag you through the mud again, and then see him get good, and then drag you through the mud again, and then see you do good, and just keep doing that and doing that and doing that. That is discouraging. That's unbelievably discouraging. And for him to say, you know, I know my brother. I know his heart. I know what he's capable of. I know what he can overcome. I know what he could do. I will not quit on him. And I remember the day before he took me to rehab, the last time I stole money again from his wife, and I could hear her downstairs and her saying, we need to press charges. We need to put him in jail. It's, you know, that nothing else has worked. And I remember him saying, I can, I love him, and I believe in him. And that's the last thing I ever heard him say when he was talking to her, about me and the situation. And I remember him having a big list, right? Clean the windows, do this, cut the grass, weed whack the hill, all these, because he wanted me to work off what I stole, you know? And I was so much of a coward and so messed up in my thinking that I left. I said, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just gonna leave and disappear and whatever. So I end up going to this girl's house and she's talking to me and she goes, Noah, she goes, your brother's been there for you more than anybody in this world. How could you turn your back on him? And I said, excuse me for 1 second now. She said to me, she said, you need to go back there. You need to go to rehab. You need to get it together. It's time. It's now or never, Noah. You're 36 years old. It's now or never. And I said, you're right. So I go back to my brother's. I'll never forget. High as a kite. I said, I have an appointment for rehab the following day. Can you please take me? He said, absolutely. So we're driving to Pittsburgh, Al, and we're right outside the VA. And there's I don't know what it's like in Utah, but a lot of VAs, there's a lot of homeless veterans. And they're all outside, asking for cigarettes, money, whatever it is, they're struggling. And I can remember still being judgmental and saying, man, look at these clowns, dude. Look at these people, man. What's wrong with these people? And I'll never forget what he said to me. He looked at me and he said, Noah, he said, look me in my eyes. So I looked him in his eye. He said, you are one of them people. He said, you are. Those homeless guys you see walking around with a bag on their shoulder, the only difference between you and them is that you have a good support system. That's it. Other than that, you were one of them dudes. And I thought about that. And I said, man, he's right. He is. He's right. I'm totally lost and I need help. So I go into the VA, and this is probably the 5th time I've been to this one. And I did my 30 days. And I remember the last day, I'm excited. I'm going to go home. I'm thinking about going on my mom's couch. I didn't have anywhere to go. I was couch surfing, this, that, and the other. And I know she didn't want me to come back, but it's my mother. I knew she would take me in. And I remember this gentleman. He was a Navy guy, probably about 6'6", 300 pounds, right? And he said to me, he said, no, you got a minute? I said, absolutely, Joe. His name was Joe. He called me in his office and he said one thing to me. He said, what are you going to do different? He said, you've been doing the same thing every time you go to rehab. What are you going to do different this time? He said one of my favorite sayings. He said, in order to have something you never had, you have to do something you've never done. What are you going to do? And I'm dumbfounded. I didn't expect this from him because he never really talked to me. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. He said, well, I'm going to tell you something, Noah, and I'm going to be honest with you. I see nothing but potential in you. I see you're a leader. I see all these people that there's 15 people in this rehab. Every one of them look to you more than they do to counselors. He said, that's a gift. Why don't you think about that gift and why don't you put something into it? Why don't you put the energy that you've been putting into these drugs and these substance abuse and manipulating people, put that into something positive, put that into yourself, into your heart, because I know it's good. I didn't know what to say to him. I said, well, what do you recommend, sir? He said, I recommend you go to a veteran program in upstate New York. It's called Bath, New York. It's a 6-month program. It has the highest success rate in the country for veterans. It'll change your life if you give 110%. I said, well, I'll do that, Joe. You let me know what to do and I'll do it. 10 minutes later, he said, I made the call. Buddy of mine runs the program up there. I got you in. You're leaving tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I'm like, holy crap. I didn't know it was going to be that fast and that serious. So I said, all right, Joe, I'll do it. And then something happened to me that I shared with you. And if you don't mind, I want to share the story.
Absolutely. Go for it.
When you go to, when you go to a rehab facility, you're pulling straws. You're looking for anything to just tell you that you got it this time. You're looking for signs. You're looking for anything you can to hold on to make yourself stronger, to build a better foundation, to build momentum. And that's one thing I want to share with all the viewers and even yourself. Momentum means so much in life, in recovery, and in anything. You build momentum. The chances you becoming whatever you want to become or doing something you want to do, you got a 90% chance of it happening more with momentum and you building it and believe in it. So I'm going to church every Sunday, Al, and I'm a Catholic, altar boy. Went to church my whole life. It was closed on that Sunday. So I left on Monday, but Sunday was the day that I spoke with Joe, and I was going to go to church in the morning, and they had a healing mass. And for people who don't know, a healing mass is where people put their hands on you and they pray on you. They anoint you with oil and all that stuff. So I've never been a big believer in being saved. I grew up with a lot of people that were saved on Monday, on Friday, they're drinking booze and smoking doobies, so I don't know, I don't want to say I thought it was baloney, but I just didn't believe in it. And being a Catholic, they're old school, up, down, Our Father, Hail Mary, it's straight by the book. So it's a lot different than a Christian service or Baptist or Mormons or Jehovah's or anything. It's a lot different. It's more old school. So I see this, I think it's, I want to say Presbyterian. I think it was that kind of service, but there were friars there, which are like monks, sort of. You remember me telling you about the friars?
Yeah, yeah.
And there was this guy, he was from Poland, and he didn't speak that well English, that well of English. And he was younger, so I was a little bit skeptical of him, but he was the one running the service. So I'm sitting down in church, and there's probably about 40 people in there, and everybody's veterans. This is a veteran facility. And I said, you know what? I said, I did everything I possibly could to overcome this. I said, I need help. I can't do this by myself. And I haven't felt God for a long time. It's been a long time at that. When I was 35 years old, 36, I just didn't have God in my life. And that's what I was searching for because I knew I needed him. So I go up to this man and I stand in front of him and I cross myself and I put my head down and I start praying. And he put this oil on my head and he put his hands on me. And as soon as that man put his hands on me, I start doing this. My knees start buckling. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way. There's no way that this is happening to me right now. I could feel it. This is crazy. So he's doing it, and then he's speaking in Latin. And I know it's Latin because my mom spoke Latin. Like back in the day in Mass, I used to speak Latin. So she knew it. So she would say certain things in Latin. So I knew what he was saying. Not like, I didn't know what he was saying in Latin, but I knew it was. And then he starts speaking in tongue, which I never heard before in my life. And when he started doing that, the feeling got even stronger. And I'm amazed by how I feel. And he stops, takes his hands off me. And I cross myself and I walk over to the pew. And I'll never forget, I sat down and I kneeled and I prayed. And I think you and I joked about this. I said, you remember as a kid when you would cry, you'd do this, like that type of stuff?
Yep.
That's what I was doing. And I was like this on a pew. And I'm just praying and I'm talking to God, just like I'm talking to you, Al. I'm saying, please, God, help me. Please get me through this. Please help me overcome this. I know I can't do it by myself. I need your help. And I remember this gentleman next to me was singing, one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard in my life. And all he kept saying to me was, God is great. God is good. And he was singing it. And it was just beautiful. And that's all I heard. I didn't hear anything else. I just heard him saying that to me. So I sit back in my seat and I'm in the pew and I'm stuck, Al. I can't move. I have this feeling that I've never felt before in my life, and I'm just stuck and I'm sitting there and he's doing the same thing he did with me with other people and they're doing their things, but it's not even like I can even acknowledge him. I'm just like, I can't explain it. It's just pure bliss. And I'm sitting there and service is over. I'm the last person in there. There's nobody else in there. It's just me. And I didn't even realize it. And I get up and I say to myself, man, I feel different. There's something, I don't know what it is, but I feel different. So I leave, right? And I go to this nurse. And she was an older woman. She's worked with veterans for 40 years. And she was telling me about angels. I was telling her what just happened to me. And she said, angels leave dimes and nickels around when they're in your presence. I said, really? I said, my mother loves angels. I've never heard that. And I was telling her what happened to me. And she started crying. She started breaking down, crying. She said, no, that's the Lord. She said, that's the Lord. He wants to guide you. He wants to help you. And, still, I feel different, but I still a little skeptical. Like I said, I didn't ever believe in something like that. So I go back to my barracks room and I get a shower and I hear, like, who the hell's knocking on my door? And it's her. And she said, hey, Noah, are you dressed? I said, yes, ma'am. Hold on 1 second. I throw my stuff on. And she goes, I just, we were talking about God and what happened to you. And I was telling you about angels. And she goes, I want to show you something. She said, I was going to the bathroom and I reached for the toilet paper and this was there. And it was a nickel. And she started crying again. And I said, she gives me a hug, and I'm just like, man. And to this day, Al, I don't know if she did that on purpose or it really happened, but it helped me tremendously.
Yeah.
So after that, we go to this NA meeting, right? And I'll never forget this man because he changed my life. His name was Malcolm, and he was the speaker. And I was walking over with this guy that was kind of riffraff, kind of there because he was on probation. You know, he wasn't really there for the good, you know, to get better. He just went there because he was going to go to jail, and he, you know, he don't want to read what do they call them, Al? I'm
Like
not really
like the
big.
12 steps or
Yeah, you know, all those papers they
yeah.
give you, help people read them and stuff. So there's this big gentleman. He's a African American dude, probably about. I always compare him to. You ever eat what is that? Uncle Ben's rice,
Yes. Yeah.
and the guy got the salt and pepper beard. You look like him, dude. No bull crap. Look just like him, but 6'6". This is a big gentleman, pants creased, polo shirt. I mean, just dapper, man. You could just tell the dude took care of himself. So he was sitting when we got there, and there's like 70 people there, 70 other veterans. And I sat next to him, and I remember the guy I was with threw the papers that he didn't want to read over by that guy. And he said, no problem. I'll read them all. He grabbed them. He read every one of them, right? So this guy that ran the group stood up after they did all the readings, and he goes, hey, I just want to introduce somebody. We got a special guest today. He has an unbelievable story. His name's Malcolm. And it was the guy that read all those things. So we're like blown away by it. We're like, wow, I can't believe we just thought he was another veteran, which he was another veteran, but we didn't know he was speaking. So he gets up and he tells an unbelievable story, man. Just unbelievable. And I shared this with you on the phone, and I'll share it with everybody else now. He could read a phone book and you would listen. You would feel it. He just had that gift. He could just talk. You just felt him. He spoke to your soul, man. And he's telling his story, and about 40 minutes go past. He probably spoke for about an hour. And he said something that was funny, and I laughed. And remember, there's 70 people there. And he said, hey, I seen you laugh. It's the first time I've seen you show emotion. He said, what's your name? I said, my name's Noah. And he dropped his head and he went, huh. He said, Noah, huh? He said, you've been running from your purpose for a long time, Noah. And it, to this day, dude, got me. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, why did he just say that to me? And I'm thinking, and I'm thinking, and I'm listening to this guy. And then he tells this story. He said, you guys got 5 minutes? I said, absolutely. He said, I want to tell you guys this story. So there, you remember me telling you this, Al?
Mm-hmm.
There were two women, and they would catch the bus. They worked in a city. They'd catch it for years and years and years. And there was this I hate to call people junkies, but he was a junkie, and they used to call him Crackhead Joe. And he would bum money off them. He'd bother people, manipulate, do whatever he could to get money and get his fix. So about 3 months go past. You know, Crackhead Joe's still doing the same thing. Still doing it, still doing this, and doing it. About 3 more months go past. They see somebody right where Crackhead Joe used to be, with a button-down shirt, some khakis on, some nice shoes, and he's helping women to their car. He's helping them with their bags. He's sweeping people's porches off. He's doing everything he possibly can to help somebody. And they look at him and go, "Is that Crackhead Joe?" He starts walking over to him. The one lady goes to him, "Hey, how you look familiar?" And he shook her hand, and he said, "I just want to introduce myself. My name is Al." And she goes, "Wow, it's nice to meet you. We can't believe what you've overcome. We're so proud of you. That's amazing. We know how hard that is. Wow, it's special. We were wondering if it was you or not." And he's encouraged and feels good about it. And he just wanted to let them know if they needed anything, he's there for them. He just appreciates that they never judged him, and they were always there for him, no matter what. They would always give him money, whatever. So time goes by, about a year or so, and he looks over at these ladies that he sees every morning, and one of them's not there. And he walks over to the lady and he goes, "Hi, ma'am. I was just curious, where's your friend at? I see you guys for years you've been coming here, and I don't see her. Is everything okay?" And as he's talking to her, this gentleman pulls up. And before she could even say anything, it was the lady's son. And he said, "Sir, are you Al?" And he said, "Yes, I'm Al." She goes, "Well, my mother's the lady that she's always with, and she's in the hospital. She's on her deathbed. She had a real bad heart attack, and she wanted me to find you because she wants to talk to you. She needs a favor." So Al says, "Whatever I could do, anything I could do, I'd be more than happy to help her." So he gets in the car, he goes to the hospital, he goes up to her room, and she's in there. She can't barely breathe out. She's really bad. She's literally on her deathbed. And I remember when he walked in, the guy wanted to take his mother's purse because he still wasn't sure of him. And his mother said, "Leave the purse, leave me alone with Al. I want to talk to him." And she looked at Al, and what she told Al was one of the most powerful things I've ever heard, because given the circumstances, given the time, given everything that happened to me, it all fell into place for me. And what she said to Al was this. She said, "Al, do me a favor." And he said, "I'll do anything you need, man." He said, "Pray for me because I know you know God." And I thought about that. And it took me a while to understand the whole story and understand what he was trying to tell me through that. To overcome the things that you and I have overcome, and other people that are watching this, is unbelievably hard. I think it's 8% of people recover. Excuse me for 1 second.
Mhm.
I've been tearing up. My nose is running.
No worries.
I apologize. And I thought about that for a while, and I was just stunned by what he said, because I used your name for an example, but when he told the story, he used my name. And it really hit me even more. It really did. And he told the story, and everyone's clapping, and they're just blown away by this story. And I'll never forget what happened next. He got up, and I was clapping, standing up, and he came over to me. And before he even hugged me, he said, "I knew there was a reason I was coming. I just didn't know it was you, Noah." And then he said this to me. He said, "I got God's armor on, and I'm going to take all that from you." And he hugged me, and I cried like a little baby. And from that day on, I have not felt guilt. I have not felt any emotion related to the things that I've done in the past in a negative way, to my family, to my friends, to the people I love. He took all that from me. He really did. And that's where my journey started. I went from Pittsburgh, VA to Bath, the VA here in Bath, New York. I did 6 months, right? I did 6 months there, uh, learning to be a peer advocate, learning anything I possibly can to educate myself and become a better individual when it comes to recovery, and even myself. The more information you get, the better off you'll be. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to continue to learn. So something else happened to me that changed my life too in this whole that part of my journey out, is that right when I was getting out, uh I ended up going to Walgreens, and I was rolling to working out, and me and my buddy was there, and we're looking for pre-workout, right? To get a little extra whatever. And to this day, I don't take it no more because I think it's kind of cheating. So I don't really mess with pre-workout. I think, it's better to do it naturally. But if you do it, I'm not knocking you, but I
Right.
got scared because it made my heart feel crazy. So anyway, my buddy's looking for it, and I see this beautiful woman come in. And I look up, and she looks at me, and I look down, and I look up again, and she looked up, and it was like a double take, and she goes into the bathroom. And you know how your buddies are. I go, "Bro, did you see that girl? She's beautiful." He goes, he described her to me. I was like, "Dude, how the hell did you see her? You were looking at the pre-workout." He said, "I see everything." I say, "Get out of here, dude." Right? He's talking crap. I said, "I'm gonna get her number." He said, you know how your buddies are. He said, "You're not gonna get nothing." I said, "All right." I said, "Dude, she's digging somebody. I could tell by her body language. This goes back to me being an interrogator. When she came out, her hair was different. So I said, she's feeling somebody." So she went over to get drinks, and I walked over, and extremely shy this woman was. And I said, "Excuse me, ma'am." I said, "I don't mean to bother you." And this is Al, please don't judge me for what I'm about to say. I don't want you to think I'm a cheesy guy.
All right.
Okay. It's a pickup line. I don't use them, but I don't want you to think I'm a cheese ball. And I said, "Do you have a boyfriend, ma'am?" And she said, all shy. She's like, "Oh, no." I said, "Well, would you like one? Because you're beautiful. I'd love to take you to dinner." And she started laughing. And at the time, I didn't have my cell phone. She didn't either. So I'm like, maybe that's a sign. I even said that to her. And I said, "You know what? I don't think it is." I said, "I'm going to go old school." I go up to the counter, and I asked the woman for a piece of paper and pen. Right. And I give her my number. And I'll never forget this. I go back to the barracks, and I text her. Right. I'm a confident guy. I've always been my whole life. And I text her. I said, "I just want to let you know you're going to be my lady." Right. So about an hour and a half goes past. That's the first thing I text her. About an hour and a half goes back past. I don't know this woman from nothing. I'm like, I blew it. I came off too strong. I blew it. Damn, she's a beautiful girl. I had my opportunity. I blew it. And a lot of people in recovery will tell you not to get in a relationship, as soon as you get
Yeah.
out, all this stuff,
Yep.
And that's, I can agree with that to a point. But in my case, it was different. So she texted me back, ended up texting me about an hour and a half later, and she said, LOL, I would love to, go on a date with you. So she's my wife now. And I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old named Atticus, and I have a 1.5-year-old named Enzo. We have a house, a beautiful house, and a family. And she was part of changing my life. She's my angel. She literally changed my life. She stopped me from going back home because I don't know what I would have done. I had all the things in a row, but I wasn't sure. I don't know. Going back to the jungle that early, you got a chance of losing your life, and that's just how it goes. And once I developed a relationship with her, I ended up going to school and I became a therapist. And I've been doing therapy for about 5 years now. And she literally was the missing link in my life. She has no idea how much she impacted my life from every aspect. And I did want to touch on this, and you and I spoke on it because it's really important to me. And it changed me as a man, even more than recovery did, and struggling and going through all those things. My 5-year-old son Atticus is autistic, and he's nonverbal. And God blessed me with a lot of gifts, Al, and all the ones that you need when you're young that makes you cool. That don't matter when you're older, but when you're young, they help. Being good in sports and being a good looking guy and being able to talk to women and having confidence and all those things. My son can't even hold a pencil. He can't use scissors. And it was so hard for me to accept that. And then I realized something, and this is pretty much one of the main reasons why I wanted to come on here, because if there's any people out there that have kids with special needs, I want them to understand something, especially as a man. When you feel like that, you're putting yourself first. You're putting your emotions first, your feelings first. That's not the right thing to do. They come second. You're a father. You have a beautiful son, daughter looking up to you. You got to be strong for them. And I always would put my emotions first. I would put my feelings first. Not thinking he's happy. He's so happy. Him being able not to use scissors doesn't affect him like it affects me, or him not being able to speak doesn't affect him like it affects me. And I thought that I was being selfish with my thoughts. And it took me, and this isn't something that I figured out, the first year. It took
Yeah.
me years to realize that about myself and about my son. But he is such an inspiration to me. I can't stress to you, Al, how important Atticus is. Not that my son Enzo isn't, he's 1.5, but Atticus changed me more than recovery did, more than my wife did, more than all the trials and tribulations I went through. He did something to me. I compare it to when I spoke with that man. I compare it to when that fire touched me. I compare it to having a connection with God. And and another thing I struggled with, Al, that I think is important, especially with parents that have kids with special needs or disabilities. Back to the Bible, sins of her father. That's the first thing I thought of. Did I bring this on myself? Did I bring this on my son? And I remember talking to my mother, and she goes, Noah, she goes, Jesus don't work like that. That's not how it works. If anything, God gave him to you because he knew you'd be able to handle it.
Yeah.
And that really crushed me out. It really did. And I just thank God that he gave me a family. I thank God that he gave me 2 beautiful sons. And I also want to thank him for giving me the understanding that my feelings and my emotions come second to my kids. You know,
Noah, with you saying all this and you sharing your names, you've got your brother Dominic, you've got this Malcolm gentleman, you have the friar, you had your mom, you had you've had these people in your life who helped you on this journey, right? I got a good friend by the name of Nicholas T. Smith. He's here in Salt Lake. Him and his buddy Ryan Morris, who we like to call Ryan the Lion Morris, started this Facebook group called A Tribe of Giants. And it's people from all over the world who have gone through adversity, resilience, come out on top, right? Or they're working their way to even get up on top. And he was on my show once, and he said, Al, he says, one thing I realized, he says, if you connect the dots backwards in your life, you'll see you're exactly where you're supposed to be at this day. And while you're sharing your story, I'm connecting all these dots backwards, right? You're just sharing your story with me, and I'm just grabbing different things and I'm connecting these dots backwards. And it brought something up to me while you were speaking. I'm a firm believer that I get emotional. God puts angels in our path. And every single one of these were your angels, right? They were there for a purpose and for a reason. And it was to get you, even though the journey was long, but you had to go through that journey to get to where you're at right now. Now you're the angel because now you're there for your son. So now you're that person. So that's what I've been hearing. And I've been listening to you very, very closely. You know, when Jesus started walking this earth and started spreading the word, he didn't pick the perfect ones to spread his message. He picked the imperfect ones. And there ain't a one of us who's perfect on this earth by all means, but there are some of us who've gone through a harder journey than others, right?
Absolutely.
But we had to travel on that journey. We had to get on that bus, even though we got off a lot of times and we got right back on the bus. You know, we did that who knows how many times, but we had to do it to get us exactly where. Like, you know, here in Utah, you can catch a bus and then you can take a bus over to tracks and then catch a tracks, and it can take you to a different area where you can catch another tracks, which would take you to another area, right? You're still going to reach your destination, but you may have to get on and off quite a few times before you reach your destination. And I'm a firm believer that God puts these people in our lives for a reason. They're the ones that go, hey, over here, you're supposed to be on this bus over here. You know, come on up. And then we'll take you over to where your next one's going to be. And it also reminds me of a story of a lady that I interviewed out of Canada, and her daughter happened to be there. And her daughter got on and shared a little bit about a story, and she was wasted and high, and she got on this bus. And she heard this voice behind her that says, excuse me, but you look like you could use some help. And she was just kind of like high and out of it. And it's just like, you know, whatever. And he goes, I'd like to take you to a meeting because that's where I'm heading right now. And she agreed. She's never seen this man again, ever. So I said during the show, that was your angel on the bus, right? That was the person that led you in the direction that you needed to go. And for those thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who have gone through the journey and who have clawed their way out, there's no other way to put it, but they're now God's angels out there spreading the hope and putting out the hand like so many people did for you, right? Now you're just paying it forward. And it's crazy because the majority of my listeners say, Al, they have helped me probably more than I have helped them. And I believe that's so true, because people like yourself, Noah, and all my other guests, I was one of the ones that did every Friday and Saturday night cocaine and alcohol. A lot of people, well, not a lot. There's a handful of them that said, Al, I don't ever look at you as an addict, right? Because it didn't take over your life. However, I lost a job of 24 years because of it. Okay. Because I couldn't stop doing it every weekend. Now, I don't even remember now where I was going to go with this, but again, it was that journey I was supposed to go on. I needed to go on this journey to put me exactly where I'm at today. And you, Noah, and all the other people that have come on now, you guys are my inspiration, right? You guys are inspiring me
Same.
to help me become a better individual. And I'm a firm believer, and my listeners have heard me say this over and over and over. I will continue to work on myself until the day God calls me home. And I'm not going to go backwards by all means. I don't care how tiny that step is, as long as it's moving forward. I know I'm going in the right direction, and I know I will not be led astray. So again, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for showing your emotions and letting people know, man, it's freaking possible. And thank you for sharing all the individuals that have helped you throughout your journey, and again, celebrate every single minute of it, right? Because there are a lot of us out there who didn't make it, that God knew that the addiction had its talons in them so deep. He brought them back home to take them away from their suffering. However, those are other ones he's helped. And they somehow, with the help of angels and other individuals, man, they've been able to pluck out those talons one by one and finally get away from its grasp. And they know it's hanging over them constantly. It's always there. It's not very far. It's just hidden in the shadows, but it's very, very close. And for a lot of us, that's our motivation to keep on plugging and keep on moving, because that's what we need to do.
No, absolutely, Al. And I do want to just step back for a second and let you know that what you just said to me was probably the nicest compliment I've ever had. When you said, how you compared me to being an angel for somebody else, how I had a lot of angels on the up and up and coming and doing all those things. And it reminded me of another compliment I just got about a week ago. And I want to share it with you if you don't mind.
Yes, please do.
So when I speak in groups or I speak in front of people, I'm the same way I am right here. I'll cry, I'll laugh, I'll cheer, I'll do whatever I can. I'm not for everybody. Don't get me wrong. I'm not for everybody. But when I do connect with you, it's more of a spiritual feeling than anything. And I remember these two women, they were from the South and they just got there and I could tell they were uncomfortable, and I think both of their poisons were crack or cocaine, one or the other. And I could tell they were uncomfortable and they really weren't feeling well. And I said, God, I said, please make me on my best. Let these people, especially these two women that just came in here, let them feel me and see where I'm coming from, and let them see the struggles and the trials and tribulations I had to overcome. Just let them feel what I'm about to say to them. I'm not lying to you, Al. It was probably one of my best groups I've ever had, and I was explaining to them how hard it is. And I was explaining to them how I just got my cousin clean about 7 months ago. I brought him up here. He was 140 pounds, got him to about 190 in 30 days, got him a routine, got him a regiment, did all these things. He went back home and used again. He took the wheel back. I always tell him, I go, when you start driving again, that's when things start getting bad. I said, just like you said a little bit ago, Al, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, that ain't shit. Let's just be honest. It's just not. You need a whole person change. Majority of people that struggle with substance, that's 10% of their problem. It's a whole person thing. It's something inside of you that's making you do those things. I've been doing this for 7 years. The one thing I see with every person I encounter? Trauma.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
That's what I see. Every person I do therapy with, any person I do group with, the one thing they have in common more than anything is trauma. They've been through it. And to me, how I look at it as a therapist, and before we're done now, I do want to give you my opinion on addiction, because I do get a lot of shit, excuse my language, from other professionals, but it's just what I've seen and what I've experienced and how I think on what I think addiction is. But I was back to these two women now real quick. I apologize. I told them my story, and I'm telling them this, and I'm telling them how far I've come. And I told them that I came to New York with a duffel bag and a dirty pair of Chuck Taylors. And, like I said, I'm not into material things, but I wanted them to know how far I've come. I told him, I said, I have a 6,000 square foot house. I said, I have 2 cars. I have a beautiful wife. I have 2 beautiful kids. We don't want for shit. I said, I didn't have nothing when I came here. You could do it. You could overcome it. You don't even know what you're capable of. You've never been pushed. You got to dig within inside yourself. And if you don't dig as deep as you have to dig, you'll be back for your shovel. And I'll be holding it. I've seen people come back here 6, 7, 8 times. I don't want that to be you too. I see the talent. I see the desire. I see the want in both of your hearts. I could feel it. That's what I'm telling these women. And after I'm done and I'm going over my spill, the lady grabbed my arm as I was walking out and she looked at me crying and she said one of the nicest things anyone ever said to me. She said, Noah, you just took us to church. And that, Al, there's no drug, there's no drink, there's no needle, there's no powder, there's no lie that will ever make me feel like that made me feel.
Yeah.
It's just special. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because I know you experienced it yourself. I could feel you, man. When we talked on the phone the first time and you were telling me what you were going through and your wife and all these things, not only did I hear you, I felt everything, man. And that's one thing I think you and I are both blessed with. Some people want to say it's a curse. I thought that for a long time because I always tell my mom always told me this, Al, ever since I was a kid. She said, Noah, you're special. I know every mother and dad says that to their kid, right? And that's what I took it for. I said, I know she's my mom. Of course she's gonna think I'm special. And then she kept telling me this and telling me this. And then I start noticing that when I talk to somebody, they would just talk to me about their problems. I'd meet somebody in the grocery store, they just talking to me like they knew me for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that happened to me. It happened to me. And it just kept happening to me. I'm like, I know why I'm here. I know exactly why I'm here. And it took me a long time to realize that because it's heavy. And you know this just as well as I do. It's heavy work, man. Being a therapist, being in recovery, doing the things that you do, this podcast, it's heavy. You're taking your emotions through the wire. You're taking your feelings. You're taking everything. At the end of a podcast, you're drained. I
Oh,
guarantee.
oh yeah, you're 100% right. At the end of the recording days, man, I am literally shot. And that's the
You're
only
all
thing
hard,
I
Al.
can think it of, right? Because it's the emotions. It's that emotional roller coaster.
And you speak from your chest. You're all heart, and that's the whole reason I wanted to come on your podcast. It was that and that itself. I said, I feel this man. There's something special about him. I know who he works with, and he works with his heart, and he works with the man upstairs, whoever he believes in. And I just felt that, man. And I started talking to you, and I said, you know what? I'd love to do his podcast. I haven't done a podcast in a while, and I think it would be good for both of us. And I'm so glad that I did this because you just uplifted the shit out of me. I can't stress to you how much you just did for my soul. What you just did for me, there. That's
Thank you.
special. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for wanting to be a part of this and for again sharing your story
Sorry.
now. You know,
I'm sorry, Al.
no, do not be sorry, brother. I mean, I'm serious. That's we got our emotions for a purpose, right? God gave them to us for a reason. And for any of those out there, which I don't think any of our listeners look at it this way, it's I never could understand. I was brought up the old fashioned way, you were probably too, where you're a man, you don't cry. Bullshit. You're a real man if you do cry. You show those damn emotions, you give them out, because that's why more men are committing suicide from the age of 18 to 50, is because they're not allowed, or they feel like they're not allowed to open up and share their emotions. So I appreciate you, Noah, for opening up and showing your emotions, because that says who you are as an individual. And it happens on our show all the time. And
I'm sure.
and it means a lot to me, right? I mean, it really does, because that means the people are there. Again, it's coming from the heart. They love it. It's whatever it is that they're feeling right now, man. Those emotions are there. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do video when I decided to do a podcast, because I want people to see the emotions. I don't want them just to hear it in the voice. I want them to see it.
No,
That's
Absolutely.
touching, right? It's just like you said, you can read people, right? You can see people, you can
And
read them. And we've got some other individuals that have been on the show that can do the same thing. They can figure out who you are probably within the first 60 seconds to 5 minutes. They know what type of individual that you are. So do not be sorry, man. Don't ever apologize on this show for showing your emotions.
well, I appreciate that, Al. Thank you so much. And before I broke down and got all emotional again, I think that it's so important to show your emotions in recovery that it's so overlooked. It really is. That's one of the things I wanted to touch on with you. I feel like in the beginning, especially even therapists and counselors, that they kind of want to concentrate on one thing at a time. You know what I mean? When someone comes into my office and they're talking to me like you're talking or I'm talking, and they're just giving me their soul, giving me their heart, I can feel it. It's just all over the room. You could just feel this dude is emptied out his soul. He wants hell. He'll do whatever it takes to become the man or woman they're supposed to be. That is something that people need to concentrate more on, emotions. Because what happens when we get clean now? They're all over the place, right? Your emotions are all over the place. They're this, that, and the
Yeah.
other. And it reminds me of there's a guy that I mentioned to you. His name is Mike Fiore, and he's on TikTok, and he's real big in the stigma of addiction. He thinks that it's important that people look at addicts in recovery differently than they do. And I'm
Amen.
a big believer in that as well, and I know you are
Yep.
too. And he's been on Dr. Phil. He's did all these beautiful things, and he doesn't have much clean time. Maybe a year or so. I think he did fentanyl, or I'm sorry, he did what the heck's it called? Methadone for years, like 15 years. And he finally got off it. And what really touched me was, and this is why, when I look at numbers, right, when I see somebody and their followers, this, that, and the other, that don't mean nothing to me. It just doesn't. I'm not one of those people. And I know it's important for podcasts and TikToks and all those things, but it doesn't discourage me to talk to somebody. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this gentleman had about 20,000 things. And I start mentoring him. And I told him one thing that when we were working together, he said, he will avoid pain, Al. And I think a lot of us do that. They avoid it. They push it off until they have to accept it or they have to confront it. And I think those emotions, and this is where I was going with that, all those emotions are something you have to smack in the face immediately and then work on them as time goes on. Because just like you talked about, or demons, I know mine personally. Like I told you the other day, I mean, probably not now for the rest of the day because of how awesome this was and how enlightening it was. But they're always talking shit to me, Al. Hey, you could do one though. You
Yeah,
got all
right.
this shit. You're good. You could do, what your wife's not gonna know, your kids aren't gonna know. Just do one. And I always say to myself, dude, get out of here. And then he'll come back. He'll come back. But you just constantly have to be aware of your emotions. And if you can control your emotions, everything else kind of falls into place. That's one thing I have learned with my experience and what I've been through. Emotions are key. Make sure you keen on those emotions. And if you can manage your emotions, you'll be managing life a lot better. You agree with that?
Oh, amen. 100%. 100%. Learn how to deal with your emotions and let go of the steering wheel and let God do the steering.
Amen, brother.
Just let it roll. Just let it roll. And it's taken me half my life to figure that crap out. But I tell you what, it's and sometimes I'm looking out the windshield going, where the heck are you freaking taking me? Because I don't get it, right? I don't get it. I don't understand. However, I know if I grab a hold of that steering wheel and decide to make a left or a right turn, it's going to be the wrong turn.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And for you to be aware of it, that's awesome, man.
yeah. So Noah, before we sign off here,
Yes, sir.
what what is something that you're hoping our listeners gained from this show, and then what would be your main message to them?
Uh, what I want the viewers to get from this show right here is what we just kind of spoke on is just being vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable, like you just touched on, men shouldn't cry. these stigmas that everyone speaks on. Just be yourself, be open-minded as you possibly can, especially in early recovery. Share your emotions, share what you've been through, because that's the only way you overcome it. And what I want to share about addiction that I think is the most important thing for me and what I tell my clients is this. You could watch motivational videos, you could go run 13 miles, you could talk to 17 different people. It's an inside job.
Yeah.
And that's all I want to share. It's an inside job. Just remember that you got to look within inside yourself.
I love it. And I'm going to use that for the title. So people they'll see this and then they'll hear this at the end of the show. Cause I believe that's the great caption, because it is an inside job, right? No one can
Absolutely.
do it for us. No one could push us to be sober. No one can push us to be better. No one, it's all us.
Yep.
It's all up to us. Now we have to have a higher power to help us,
Oh,
because we
100%.
cannot do it alone, right? I'm a firm believer on that. However, as long as we're doing it for ourselves, those chess pieces will be put in place that will help us along the way to make
Oh,
it just a little bit easier.
absolutely. And one thing I do want to add is try listening to this guy, not this guy.
Yeah.
See what happens. All right, guys, listen to your heart and see what happens. Your head will screw with you. Your demons will start talking to you. But your heart, if you're a good person, which majority of people are, he'll steer you right. Your heart will steer you right. A lot of
Yeah.
people get that confused.
Amen. Amen. I'll ditto on that.
I'm man.
Noah, thank you so much for your time,
Thank you.
brother. Greatly appreciate you. And I'm so glad that we connected. And again, doing this show, man, I've got family all over the world now. And I just flipping love it. I love the individuals I get to meet and the inspiration that I get to be a part of every week. So thank you again. I greatly appreciate you. Thank you to all our listeners. All our sponsors, our guest co-hosts when we have them, guys. You've heard me say this many times on our shows. At the end of it, we wouldn't be here still to this day if it wasn't for you guys. And I mean, this is all seriously. Yes, it's AR, the other side of addiction. This is just a platform. All I'm doing is offering a platform. It's your guys' testimonials. It's your guys' stories that is making this a success and continue to go. And I'm so blessed. We are probably, by about the time this show airs, we will be coming up on our 200th episode, which just blows me away. I cannot believe we're at 200 episodes already. It just seems like it went by quicker than the first 100. So again, I have to thank every single one of you. We're going to end the show the way we do every single time, guys. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.